standpoint of artificial turf or all-weather turf versus natural turf, and setting the cost aside, because I know installation of those fields is, or conversion of those fields is really prohibitively expensive. But just from a maintenance standpoint, can you help me understand the benefits or even the cons of an artificial turf field?
So as far as the maintenance of artificial turf, there is still maintenance required for artificial turf. Some of those are what they call like combing, where you have to basically, it's dragging a machine kind of combing the field to keep the material in the right place, because it can also move around underneath the top layer of the surface. Other things that happen as well as is going through and actually with a magnet and picking up any metal objects whatsoever. Again, that anything metal that gets into that could cause damage to it. So you want to continuing to like they have them set up as just basically big magnets that you have to drive over them to pick up any metal pieces. And so and I mentioned the combing and the grooming. Again, a lot of it's just, it's not probably as extensive as say a turf, regular natural turf, but there's still the maintenance requirement. And even the maintenance, even there's irrigation sometimes required of the artificial turf because it does get hot. So there is possibly could be some irrigation required to water it down. The big thing it does, as it mentioned, it does save on water usage. But as far as the maintenance, there is still, a maintenance requirement associated with it. And again, depending on the play of the field, you would have to do the combing or the grooming more often or less, depending on the play. Because again, when you invest that much money, you want to make sure that it lasts the longest as possible. So it probably would be more, it would be more a schedule, more of a priority to make sure all that happens, because you don't want to damage that turf, that artificial turf, and shorten its lifespan. And so that would probably have to be put a priority, whereas the natural turf would be, it's more forgiving overall, because you can fix that. It might take a little time on these spots, but you can fix those areas, those high wear areas. But you don't have that option. If you make a mistake or miss something, or if that artificial turf gets damaged, then it's a lot bigger expense in the long run.
And after a wet weather event, is the artificial turf field more playable sooner than a natural turf field?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's set up for that. It's set up to be playable on rain and wet conditions. There's drainage associated with it that takes the water away. But yeah, it's all weather, so it doesn't matter if it's rainy, sunny. You can play on it anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Carolina, go ahead.
I want to thank you for the wonderful job that you're doing on all those fields. I'm always amazed how many there are. And whenever you go by them, and it's pretty easy to go by a park or any kind of a playing field in Santa Rosa, and they really look terrific. And I want to thank you. I know this just doesn't happen. I just want to thank you for staying on top of it and giving us the wonderful opportunities for the kids and the families to play. So you and your guys are great.
It's our pleasure. Our whole crew is very proud of the work they do. They take a lot of pride in the fields.
You can tell.
So I will definitely pass that on to them, and they'll greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Good.
Any other board comments or questions? Carol, go ahead.
Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Several questions. Go figure. Going back to the sports turf maintenance, 4 seasons. from what I can tell, the fields, not necessarily the baseball fields, but the open fields, they're in use year round. They don't really have off seasons. I know that individual fields are sometimes put fallow and marked. Sometimes those signs are respected and observed. Sometimes they're not. Do you, regardless of the weather, regardless of the use, or is the third slide kind of more of an ideal than a practical reality?
It's more ideal than reality. We're definitely kind of at the mercy, for the most part, of our field usage. Our goal is to have fields available for everybody, regardless of the time of year. And we can't necessarily police, keeping people out of them. And so we do the best we can. There's road groups that play in fields that that can tear them up in a weekend, and it is a challenge, because they are open to everybody for use. But yeah, it's more of ideal situation is the slide I'm showing, and that's our goal. That's what we strive to get.
Thank you. My next question had to do with perspective on how many hours a day. Again, this would be more soccer fields. How many groups can come through, how often the turnover is, and if any of the groups that use them ever do a bit of maintenance between events, be it replacing divots. Can we ask our users to help out a challenging situation?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So on the soccer side of things, we have not had a group or volunteer. Well, actually, I take that back. Once in a while, we get a group that would volunteer to do divot replace, or we provide soil for them that they can go out and do some replacement. Generally, it's the younger clubs that are willing to do that aspect of it. Not so much maybe the older teams are inclined to do that, but we've had members step up and offer some help and give us support in some ways. We get that more support probably from the softball and baseball leagues. They are very good because about volunteering and helping us out maintain those fields. And so I guess I want to make sure I thank them, because we do get a lot from them. They take a lot of pride in their fields, and as baseball players and as younger age group, they definitely get involved with that. So we do work with a lot of the groups, more so on the baseball, softball side than the soccer. Again, it kind of goes with the age and what they're willing to do. But we don't necessarily require that as part of their agreement. A lot of times they just volunteer to do it, but there's no requirement for them.
Thank you. And my last question was a soccer field. How many hours a day could a field be getting hammered with use?
On the weekend, I probably all day, from 8 o'clock or from sun up to sundown, that a soccer field can be used. That's probably a better question for Amy because of the scheduling that she does. But we can definitely tell a weekend separate from a weekday on our fields use, because come Monday, Tuesday, when we're out there, checking out the damages, you can definitely see the wear over a weekend period of time. Generally, like during the weekdays, maybe in the evenings, because that's when kids and stuff are playing. So, maybe they can get a game in there in the evening, but on the weekend, I'm pretty sure that they're probably sun up to sundown.
Thank you.
I'll add to that, Carol, that they are rented on the weekends, every field from 9 a.m. to about 6 p.m. on the weekends. And if there's sunlight hours, and when they're done, if the game ends early, there are road groups standing on the side of the field ready to take the field. As soon as a sanctioned team with a permit leaves, there's other teams and road groups showing up. to take the field. So they are, as Tim said, used 7 days a week from morning till night.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, Tim, I had a few. We got a presentation a few months ago from a consulting firm that's doing a maintenance assessment, and I know that's not the right term. So Jen or Tim, whatever the study we're doing. So tell me the right term, and then what's your interaction with that?
So I mean, you're correct in the term they're assessing the park use. Yeah, and our communication with them, they provided us kind of with a outline or a survey that we took around to all our fields in evaluating those items that we are involved with. A big one was irrigation, because we're in there, hands-on, doing our irrigation repairs, knowing the age of the system, knowing the problems of the systems. We gave that input to them to put into their metrics, and seeing where everything sits at. And then along with that irrigation, that kind of goes hand in hand with the turf. Usually if you see poor looking turf, it's generally associated with poor irrigation. So those go hand in hand. But we worked, hand in hand with them and determining what was wrong with certain parks, and what needs to be fixed and repaired, and where we're having challenges at.
Okay, that's great. I think that's a really important effort, that the public will eventually be able to see those scores and all the information and hold us accountable. And you'll keep doing a great job. I had a question too on the drought issue. What percentage of the city's water use is our acreage at parks? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Like average park size, is that what you're kind of?
No, in the total, out of 100%, what percentage is used on our parks?
As far as our water usage?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of our parks, I mean, they were designed with a lot of turf. It's not until here recently that, they've kind of switched over and, having smaller turf panels and so forth. So as far as the water that we use, is probably 90-95% of the water that maintenance uses is turf.
Well, I was going to say, I can chime in and just let you know, we don't usually track comparisons by department. We certainly have a water budget for how much we use in parks, and we can get that information. We can get that information to you and as a comparison, but it's not something we necessarily look at from a, who's using water in facilities, if that's what you're asking, and who's using.
No, sorry. And maybe Tim, that question wasn't for you. That was more, I know it's not a lot is what I'm getting at. I know it's like in the single digits of the city's total water use. And I think to members of the public, they might think it's a lot more. So I think it would be helpful to broadcast that more widely to folks that, all these fields, everything. So for example, single family homes were like over 80% of the city's water use. So out of that 100%, 80 is people's houses. I'm just trying to figure out how we can communicate to the public, because I hear that from folks, is how much water are we using at the parks? And so I just want to be able to go back to them and say, well, actually only 7% of the city's waters our parks, or whatever it's doing, flushing toilets or anything. Yeah, Carol, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I have an anecdotal comment on that. At a recent park cleanup, someone came by and asked staff why everything looked so green. They weren't allowed to water their lawns, but everything looked so green. And staff said, well, it's winter. We don't water except for the ballpark, which the ball field, Jen, you can correct me, or Tim, there was a safety issue where certain fields in use have to be watered as a safety accommodation, but the parks themselves are not watered. And I thought maybe some courtesy signs along those lines that said something like, note, water is not being used on, word it properly. People didn't like thinking that the parks were getting to do something that they weren't. And a little bit of information could potentially go a long way.
Yeah, great point, Carol. And Tim, by the way, I was at that cleanup I think Carol's talking about too, and so was Madonna at Franklin Park. So I wanted to say good job to your crew on that. It was fun to come out and do that. Anyways, if you want to respond to Carol, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. Carol's, exactly right. We are not watering the parks, and the time of the year, things are green. This is still winter. And so, we are doing some watering now currently, as far as safety wise, and for seeing some of the areas that are getting dried out that we can put a little bit of water on. But for the most part, everything you see right now is all natural. Morning dew and so forth, the moisture is drawn up during the night. So everything looks wet. And so it's a little deceiving right now. And again, I understand it here, middle of February, we had, close to 80-degree weather. And so it does feel like spring, but it is still winter, and the plant is doing what it does during the wintertime. It stays green because the conditions are perfect for it.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Tim. Those were my questions. Terry, go ahead.
Just one quick follow-up question, actually, to your question, Logan. Are we using reclaimed water on any of our parks?
Yes, we are. I can answer that. So the fields that we're able to have reclaimed water, actually is just the one is at a place to play. That's as far as the system has been designed to handle. We have a few other little parks, and Finley Park has reclaimed water on it, but that's as far as the system has been brought to it. A lot of the water, of course, is going up to the geysers. And so as far as expanding the system, I think they talked a little bit about that at the higher levels of how much water we're giving to that operation that we couldn't possibly make available to some of our other operations. But currently the only, say, soccer fields or sports fields that we got reclaimed water actually happening is at a place to play.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the days where we couldn't give it away, and now it's quite the commodity. So thank you.
Carol.
Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't we also have well water used specifically out at Galvin? I don't know if there's any other that's on well.
At Galvin, the only probably well water that is for the golf course. The park itself is domestic water that waters that field. And we do have some other wells. Jennings Park and Southwest Park have some wells that we're able to pull some from to water those fields. So there is some out there, but majority is domestic water.
All right, if that is everyone.
Chair Pitts, we have a follow-up question from John, if you have time.
Yeah, we can entertain another public comment. That's fine.
All right, John, we'll give you one more minute.
Great. I started that raising my hand on the artificial turf maintenance thing. I have been involved in artificial turf fields for, I don't know, 17 or 18 years now, and have maintained artificial turf fields for 17 or 18 years. They require maintenance, same order of magnitude as a natural grass field if you want to maintain them at a high level. FIFA recommends that you groom a artificial turf field for every 40 hours of use by 22 players. So if you're typical youth environment, you're going to get between 40 and 80 hours of use per week on an artificial turf field. And, somebody was talking about usage. One of the things I would say is on a natural grass field, the field will probably sustain about 20 hours of use a week. you get about 15 hours of use after school, and you get about 16 hours of use on the weekends. And so you're breaking down the field over time.
Thank you, John. Succinct and right on time.
Chair Pitts, you're muted.
Oh, I am muted. Thank you. Thanks, John, for that comment. Just one other thing I'll add is, I don't know why there's some people that really hate artificial turf and have some conspiracy theories about it. So you might get that sort of interaction, Tim, if we ever go down that road. But thank you for that presentation, and thanks to Amy for helping out.
All right, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, you too. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions and the discussion. Next on the agenda is item 8, our committee reports. Item 8.1 is our mayor's lunch. I attended that, and as did Carol, and I don't have any major updates. I think one that is not going to surprise folks is the Board of Public Utilities is looking at more drought-related restrictions. Basically, if the city does not get a lot more rain, we're going to be entering into what's known as Stage 5. And the highlight of Stage 5, there's a lot, but it would put a new building moratorium, new housing moratorium into effect. So this is an ordinance from the 1990s that's never really been updated. I think the council will definitely be updating that part of it, and maybe others. But, you know, could be in for a long, hot summer. The other update was from the Charter Review Committee. The chair, Patty Cisco, shared some of our work. I'm also on that. And we're definitely looking at some interesting stuff. We've gotten through increasing council member pay. That's going to go to the city council to possibly place on the ballot. We debated an at-large elected mayor. That was more mixed, kind of basically almost a split vote. So the council can take that up or not and ask the voters to approve that. And these changes would go on the November 2022 ballot to change the charter. And then the other one was about ranked choice voting. So we have 9 more topics the city council assigned us. So I'm sure I'll have more to update folks. And that's some interesting stuff. If you want some hardcore political science stuff, go watch those meetings. It's I love it. So, and item 8.2, any questions on that? Any comments? All right. Item 8.2, Carol, do you have a report from the Waterways Committee?
I do. Last month, we were presented with a proposal from the Hyatt down on the Santa Rosa Creek, wanting to rather drastically update their fencing because of problems with the homeless issue. And the presentation, it wasn't as fleshed out as the board had wanted, so it's been revised and is coming back to the Waterways Committee tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As a result of this 800-foot long fence on the Prince Memorial Greenway, I've had even more cause to go down. I visit it regularly on my bicycle, but I am pleased to report that currently the path is amazingly clean, to the point where last Saturday's river cleanup, the river community cleans it up. I wanted to go, couldn't, emailed a friend afterwards and said, sorry, too cold for me. And she reported back, that's okay. It was a huge turnout and very little to do. Now, I have never heard anything so wonderful as there was very little to do on the creek. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see what happens moving forward with this project. And many things are starting to pop on the downtown section of the Santa Rosa Creek. More on that at a later date.
Thanks, Carol. I rode my bike down there on Saturday and it was looking good. Thanks for that report. Okay, we are moving on. Any questions or comments from the board? No? Director Santos, we are moving on to agenda item 9. Do we have any written or electronic communications?
So the board received 2 electronic communications, one from Adolfo Mendoza regarding park and field maintenance, specifically regarding soccer, and another one from Casey Ollenberger from regarding Doyle baseball field.
Thank you. All right, we are on to agenda item 10. This is our future agenda items. Normally I would go at the end, but I wanna kick this one off with something that's important to me. I would like us to discuss in the future a plaque at Flat Rock Park. And for those that aren't familiar with this plaque, it's pretty old. It was put there in 1936. And by today's standards, it's basically, it's very offensive and basically racist. It uses, it glorifies a myth about how Santa Rosa was named. And just putting that aside, whether that happened or not, it uses the term Indian made to describe the event. Anyways, what I've done is I've directed staff to look at how we can possibly remove this plaque. It definitely does not fit our modern standards. It does not fit the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it should be taken down. What happens after that, I think, is a broader discussion, and I want to get folks' thoughts on this now or when we talk about it in the future. But I also want to broaden this conversation to other park sites that could use an addition or a subtraction to recognize some of our marginalized communities. For example, we have Comstock Mall downtown, where there used to be a historic Chinatown, and there's no recognition of that right now. So I want folks to use your imagination, use your heart, and try to figure out how we can do better as a city. So I've spoken with board member Cruz about this and with staff. So we'll be talking about Flat Rock Park in the future. It's near and dear to my heart. I grew up nearby playing there a lot. And I'll just tell you, I've had city residents bring this up with me too. This isn't just my own issue. They're deeply offended by it. And that's not how folks should feel when they visit our park. So we'll see that in the future. And Madonna, go ahead.
Yes.
You have some thoughts.
Thank you. Yes, I want it torn down as soon as possible, but in a respectful and professional way. The research and wants from the Native community is where I would want to go. Who would I give that information or suggestions to? Would that be to Jen or would that be to you, Mr. Pitts?
Jen, go ahead.
I would say, please feel free to send me any information you have, or if anybody else on the board has comments or questions, please feel free to send those to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and most, and to me, it's reaching out to the natives that were here, the Miwok. So, and I am not Miwok, but my relatives are. So, I know who I need to talk with. Thank you.
Thanks, Madonna. Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there are any protocols in place for this kind of thing. We would be usually, in my long history, we would usually be at the end of this process reviewing it. Good on you for spearheading this, but I'm wondering if there are city protocols or steps in place that we should acknowledge. And the other thing, unrelated, is in looking at the presentation schedule that Shelley presented at the beginning of the year. Today was scheduled for Park Planning 2022. I'm wondering if that has been moved to a different month, and I would move that on my calendar if that's been decided. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, on the first point, that's a great question. So Jen is looking into that, and I'll let her speak to that, and working with the city attorney's office on how we would do that. It's also sort of adjacent to our update to our naming policy on parks. So those are good questions, Carol, and we need to probably make better procedures if we don't have them. But they are looking into that. And then also on the scheduling, I'll let Jen answer that one too on the scheduled items. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure. And, one of the things we're looking at is there doesn't appear to be any particular policy relating to something like this. So one of the reasons we'll be bringing this back at a future date is that it's more than a discussion for this board. It's a discussion for city and city council members and the city attorney's office. So it's going to be a much bigger endeavor. And so we want to make sure we're having that discussion with our elected officials and our executive team at the city. And we'll be bringing back updates here to the board when we have them for discussion at the board level. And then, yes, we often do move things around on our schedule depending on different things that are happening. And the budget team was a little bit behind in getting us the numbers for our capital update. So we're moving it to March, and we'll give you a capital update in March. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fully aware this is a process that will probably get political and controversial. It will definitely have to be handled by the city council. But I've spoken with Mayor Rogers. He's fully in support of removing the plaque, also is deeply offended. So he's got our back on this. And I know it's also not going to be quick, but it's the right thing to do. So yeah, those were my future agenda items. Does anyone want to add anything else for a future agenda item? Steve, I thought you might have an idea.
What idea might that be?
I was told you had a good idea, and I wanted to give you credit for it, about us giving our own updates.
Oh, well, thank you. It's just something that's done in most board meetings, commissions, and city councils around the state, around the country. And I think it's going to work out quite nicely. It gives everyone an opportunity to share things that they're thinking about, in addition to putting things on future agendas. Many times things don't make it to the agenda. And I think it's good for the public to also hear that their board members, commissioners, and city council folks are, thinking beyond the agenda that's in front of them.
I agree 100%. Great idea. And you deserve credit. The city council does that, so we can model it after them. And already spoken with staff about that. So I hope that'll start next month. Let's try to get that going pretty soon. Terry, go ahead.
Not a future agenda item specifically, but I'm just curious, for Jen, has there been any discussion at the city about resuming in-person meetings in the near future?
Not in particular. I know that there's been some guidance for us that we may start attending in-person meetings, but for the board itself, we are still working on the technology to make a hybrid meeting happen. So that's where the discussions have been around hybrid, because this model works so well for members of the public that cannot physically be in attendance. They can attend this. It also gets recorded. So if they couldn't make the meeting, they can come back and look at it. So we're looking at options for us to use technology in the location where we used to have our in-person meetings at Findlay. That is on schedule to be updated so that we can conduct hybrid meetings. It's not moving as quickly as we had anticipated. We thought it would be a little bit easier than it has been, but it's moving forward. But staff and others at the city are allowed to now attend meetings in person or meet people at sites, etc. So we're starting to do that again, and we're all back in the office.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Terry, I asked about that too. And I would love to see you all in person. I think it'll make our discussions better and more robust. I also want to make sure that we still have a virtual format. So like Jen said, people have really gotten used to this in the last 2 years. I think engagement's increased, and gotten better personally. And so I'm committed to us doing a hybrid format. We can't do it in the council chambers. There's more pressing business probably, but maybe someday. But Finley would be great. And thank you, Jen, for keeping the pedal to the metal on that one. Any other future agenda items that anyone would like to see? Okay, well, I hope I didn't mess up my first chair meeting too much. Thank you, everyone. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the board will be held on Wednesday, March 23rd at 4 p.m., still at 4 p.m. for now. Stay tuned for that change. And I'm going to pick up my gavel again so I can actually bang the meeting out. And with that, I adjourn this meeting of the Board of Community Services at 6:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair Pitts.